So my name is Bernadett, and I have graduated Uni Aberdeen in 2020. I graduated economics and finance, like first class honors. Um, and after that, I have moved on to work at EY, where I'm still working to this day. So almost, yeah, it's actually 4 years, 4 years now. Um,
Thank you very much. And why did you choose University of Aberdeen for your education?
um, I think for me that was it was kind of like a choice of elimination, really. I knew, so I'm originally from Hungary, and I knew I want to study abroad. And at the time when I applied, it was still free to study in Scotland. So I think that contributed to my decision a lot to choose Scotland as a destination. And after I started to research Scottish universities, I think I was obviously attracted to Aberdeen because it's a very old university. It's quite prestigious, and it's one of the best unis in Scotland, especially for my subject area as well. So I thought it would be a good choice to just kind of study at Aberdeen, and then choose Aberdeen as I wouldn't say it was my first choice, it was my second choice, but I was definitely happy with it, and I don't regret it, hindsight at all. So I'm happy I ended up in Aberdeen.
Perfect, thank you. And why did you choose to study economics and finance?
So originally started with international business and politics. And in the first year, you obviously can choose and study a lot of different subjects. And I had an economics module and a finance module, which I really enjoyed. So basically, after the first year, I changed my major to economics and finance. And yeah, I think it was the best choice for me. And probably I'm more mathematical and I more enjoy the quantitative stuff rather than qualitative. So I think that's why economics and finance was probably the best choice for me.
Great, thank you. And what were some of your favorite memories from Aberdeen?
Um, Probably the community in Aberdeen. And that just spans between like societies and just studying together in the library, like very simple things. I'm still in touch with so many so many people from Aberdeen, the people I graduated with. I lived with people after graduating from Aberdeen, and one of the girls is still my neighbor from Aberdeen. So I think just basically the community and the people, it really makes Aberdeen what it is. It's such a small, it's not a small uni, but it feels like a small uni. And you make just lifelong friends there. So I think that definitely is still my favorite thing about Aberdeen.
That's great. And next question is, what are some core values, skills, and qualities that you learned at university?
Um, I think probably when I graduated, I would have said more on the technical parts, like about finance and economics and like how that helped me get a job. But for I think now in the hindsight, probably the biggest things I learned was more on the softer skill side. Like I was part of a lot of societies, um, just being like in different roles. And that's how I made a lot of connections and just learn how to network with people, how to establish like a good rapport with people very quickly on. So I think that is the biggest thing that you can take away from uni, like expand your network as much as possible, and then just kind of learn how to actually talk to people, how to actually like network with them, how to actually get to know them, because that will get you very far in your career. Like at least for me, I'm in a client facing role. That is just really important for me to know how to like make a connection very quickly on, which like obviously Aberdeen helped a lot. Just because you have so many societies and so many things you can get involved with. Um,
That's interesting, thank you. And what were your career aspirations while you were a student?
So I wanted to be an investment banker. And I think a lot of people in economics and finance would say the same thing. Um, but I think you don't, like as a student, I don't think you really understand what that comes with and the personal sacrifices that you need to make in order to become an investment banker. Um, so I went to do the next kind of best thing, which is working at EY in strategy and transactions, basically working on deals. Um, just because obviously I didn't get into JP Morgan in London, which is very surprising. Interestingly, later on, I got an offer from Rothschild for a position, which then I rejected because by the time I got the offer, I actually realized that life is not for me. But I think we only realize that as soon as you go into the workforce and you realize like what it actually comes with, and then you realize like maybe this is not the life I want for myself.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, I that was my biggest goal, but now it definitely has changed like 4 years on. So yeah, it's always a fluid thing, isn't it? Your
Yes,
career. So
absolutely. That's very interesting. Thank you. And the next question is, what societies did you participate in while you were a student?
all of them.
All right.
I did a lot. So I was part of the business society. I was a treasurer there for a year. Then I did Aberdeen Trading and Investment Society. I did I'm not even sure how to role senior analyst for a specific sector. I did the University of Aberdeen Finance Society where I was a vice president. Um, and then just was involved with like organizing the economics conference that is in Aberdeen.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, just a lot of random things, but I think these three were the main ones that I was involved with for multiple years.
That's very interesting. Thank you. And did you have any part-time jobs, volunteering experiences, or internships while you were a student?
Yes. I was working part-time for the first 2 years in Union Square, just basically like being a waitress, nothing too interesting. And then I got an internship for 1 summer with BT after my second BP, not BT, BP, after my second year, working basically in the internal finance team. And then through that, I got an internship during my third year at the university. So I was working in the careers and employability service, basically as like a data
Mhm.
analyst. Um, when that ended in June, I did my EVA internship, and
Mhm.
after they hired me back at the Careers and Employability Service, more like a research analyst. So while I was there for the first time, I submitted a research bid for investigating how sociology students and in general, like more like people studying softer skills at uni, so like social sciences, like anthropology, sociology, how can those employability skills actually be presented in an interview setting? So we won a research bid for that. So we got some funding. So then they hired me back from that money, and then I just carried out that research. So basically, now that's published, but that's what I did in my last year, my fourth year at uni. And basically, as soon as I finished that, so I think I finished end of August, I started with EY. So throughout the whole university, I did have internships and jobs all over the place. So
Mhm.
I did quite a few.
That's very impressive. That's very impressive.
Thank you.
And what licenses or certificates did you acquire?
At uni, obviously there is like a compulsory ones. I don't know if it's still compulsory, but I did the Bloomberg certificate.
Mhm.
I also did a KPMG Inside Day, but that's my first year. You got like some certificates for that. Um, I think that's in terms of licenses, probably that's it during uni.
Yeah. Okay. And do you think they're beneficial and should our students consider them to do them in the future?
I think the more like kind of qualifications that you can get, obviously the more useful it is. But as you go through like more real life work experiences,
Mhm.
like for example, when I went to BP, I didn't really know about Power BI, let's say. And then at BP, they were working with Power BI every single day. So I just kind of have to learn it. And while I didn't, necessarily went on and did a training course and get the license, I am proficient in Power BI now. So it's just kind of
Mhm.
how you it's not how you get the skills, it's just so you have them. So I'm always probably more inclined for people to get like practical experience if it's possible. I know it's not very easy to get an internship like I've been there, but I probably would say instead of just sitting in front of a computer and studying, just to get a license through like Udemy or whatever, probably it's better if you like go out in the real world and get the experiences like that.
Thank you. And can you explain what is EY?
I think everyone knows EY. But EY is yeah, EY is basically just a big financial consultancy doing a lot of things. I think one of the main thing people know EY from is like auditing. And EY is mostly specialized in tech audits. I'm not in the audit department, so I don't really know much about that. Um, and EY also has a smaller kind of consulting corporate finance arm, which is the arm that I'm part of, and that's the department I'm working in.
Thank you. And can you explain us a little bit more your job and responsibilities within the company?
Yep. So what I do, I work in the strategy and transaction department, and within that, I work in transaction diligence. So transaction diligence is basically a part of the deal cycle. So when there is a sell side or a buy side mergers and acquisition deal, you need a lot of different advisors, right? You need an investment bankers who are then basically like salespeople trying to sell the company. You need legal advisors, you need financial advisors, you need commercial advisors. And my main role is the financial part. So basically doing the financial evaluation of the target company, preparing like an equity value to enterprise bridge, doing adjusted financial schedules, basically evaluating what the company is worth, and then advising either the buy side or sell side, depending on which side we are on the actual value of the company. I think it's also very interesting. It really depends on which side you are on, because if you're on the sell side, you obviously want to sell it for as high a
Yeah.
price as possible. But if you're on the buy side, you just want to like negotiate it down. So it's always like you have to look at it from a little bit of a different angle. You you are technically like an impartial advisor. You have to be like really impartial and really just like factually state everything about the company that you know in like a report. So like our main output is a report. Um, which is prepared in PowerPoint. So it's not like a Word long document. It's not like legal people. It's more like charts and graphs and similar to consulting. Um, but it's supposed to be like very factual. But like these things can creep in on depending on which side you are on. So it's really client facing, a lot of talk with management and higher people in the company, like CFOs, like M&A leaders, M&A directors, and just in general talking to your client, obviously. So it's very client facing and very analytical. So I think it is kind of a good role for people like myself who just want to do kind of both sides and enjoys both doing both.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I guess that's very briefly.
Very interesting. Thank you. And what is the proudest moment in your career?
Um, Whew. That's an interesting question. I think for now, my proudest moment was when I received my chartered accountancy certificate. So while you are uh, being at EY, you need to do a chartered accountancy regardless if you're in audit or anywhere else, and you need to study for your chartered accountancy alongside work. So you have 16 exams, and you need to do some certain amount of like practical hours. You need to do a lot of like admin submissions of like what you did. Um, so it's a lot of work and a lot of studying. So when you finally get that certification and you get kind of the CA after your name,
Yeah.
um, which is obviously a lifelong, you're part of that institution, and it just kind of recognized all around the industry. So if you look at all the Fortune 500 or FTSE 100, all the CFOs there are usually having a CA. So without the CA, you're kind of like a CFA is useful, and obviously CFA is more on the investment side, but a CA is definitely a very like gives you that very basic knowledge that if you want to move into a corporate or want to make your own company, it's really,
Mhm.
really useful. So I think that was definitely probably my proudest moment. It's not really work related, but somewhat it is.
Yeah.
So
Very interesting. Thank you. And how important is networking in your industry?
um very
Mhm.
I think I'm just starting to realize and scratch the surface of how important it is. Um as I am like progressing through my career. It's basically, since it's client facing, as you're progressing through the ranks, you obviously need to be able to bring in business and bring in clients. And the only way you can bring in clients and bring in business is if you know people, because that's the only way they will look you up and they will be like, okay, I will turn to you and I know you are qualified in this. Um, so I think that's basically like the cornerstone everything. If you cannot network, and even just networking with your own colleagues, really, like you need to, like that's when you get the best opportunities. Like if you network with senior people, if you're establishing a really good relationship with them, that's when they will find you and give you the projects that you need in order to get promoted and in order to develop. So yeah, networking is the base of everything. I think, especially in finance or consulting, you you really need to do that. Otherwise, yeah, it's really hard to succeed otherwise.
Yeah. And what's your advice for students to improve their networking skills?
Um, I think societies is one. Societies are a brilliant place to like try out your networking skills, really, because it's a really safe environment. Everyone is a student. No one really is, like it's not an intimidating. It can be when you first enter and everyone seems to know each other, but it's still like everyone is super nice, everyone is super accepting. So I think societies is definitely a first good starting point. Then if you can manage to land an internship or even just a job at uni, like let's say some of my friends worked at the cafe in the library,
Yeah.
or just like very simple things, um or even like working as a waitress in Union Square, like you will meet so many different people that you will need to like somehow tolerate and just learn how to talk to them. I think that also helps. And also like internships, not that's a step up, but it's more how you can talk and be successful in a professional environment. And if you learn that through an internship, it will be much easier on interviews, it will be much easier on graduate jobs because you already know what they are looking for and already know what like people in the industry are looking at. Um, so it's definitely like those steps. And as you enter a society, it will be easier to get a job and it will be easier to get an internship. So I think it's all just comes together at the end, like very nicely in a bow. Um, but as a student, that's definitely one thing. And the other thing is like what you are doing right now is like reaching out to random alumni people and just talking to them, because then you just build some type of rapport with the people already. And then you can obviously, every one of us that you talk to will be more than willing to then help you or talk to you in the future or meet up for a coffee in London, for example. Like there is so many different ways you can build your network, but probably societies are the easiest way to do that.
Thank you very much for this advice. And can you share any books or resources that were particularly beneficial for your career?
Um, to be perfectly honest, the books I'm reading is very, I would say, not related to my career. In some ways they are, obviously, but when you work 10 hours in finance every day, you don't want to go and then read the finance book. Like, let's be let's be honest. I think I read a lot of psychology books, like, and time management books. Um, which like I read Time and Money, I read Atomic Habits, like kind of just how to manage your time. And I think that was very useful when I entered the workforce and I realized like, oh, I have so many hobbies. Like I want to go to the gym, I want to meet up with my friends, but I also need to work 12 hours a day. So like, how do I fit it all in? Because at uni, I feel like you have all your time is a free time, apart from obviously lectures and work, which is not a lot of hours in a week. So you kind of manage your time much more easily than when someone is telling you like, I need you from 9 till 9 every single day. How
Yeah.
do I make the most of it pre-9 and post-9, which is I think is the hardest part. Um, so probably soft skill books really helped me. I I wouldn't say need to be in order to get a job. I always thought I need to be more technical, but I think whenever I interviewed for jobs and I couldn't answer a technical question, it wasn't the end of the world until they saw me as a good cultural fit and they saw me as being like enthusiastic and willing to learn. So I think as long as you are being organized and just on top, like they can see that you're on top of it, you can get away with not knowing technical because technical is easy to teach. Soft skills are much harder to teach.
That's true.
So I think, yeah, maybe being like an overall well-rounded person is probably, and the books that you read should reflect that. I don't want to give you the advice to read the Financial Times every day because I don't think that will make you that well-rounded person that most companies are looking for.
Yeah. Thank you. And would you recommend your career to others, your industry?
uh, yes and no. If I could go back, I would probably do something different. But I think that's very also like a very personal choice. Like I was a lot interested in like for example biology, and maybe I would probably go down that road now if I could go back. I think finance is a very cutthroat career, and it's still very male dominated. Um, and there's still a lot of the old kind of mentality there of you need to work hard, you need to be there for 12 hours, you need to do all these like very like old kind of things that are obviously like if you work for Google or Facebook or Meta, like that things doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
Um, so I would either choose probably a tech career, like working in technology, trying to do something there because like obviously Google, Microsoft, Meta, they provide you so many opportunities that you can do, and they are much more ahead of the curve than finance. And they also give you more transferable skills in terms of AI. Um, but I would also probably as a personal choice, I wouldn't necessarily go into finance. But finance is a good, stable career. I would also say that. Like it gives you quick development opportunities. It gives you obviously a good starting salary compared to everything else. People are extremely knowledgeable, motivated, and enthusiastic, so you can learn a lot from like day one. And finance will always be there as an industry. Like we will always need people who know what to do, and the work is very interesting. It's like varied every day. Like I'm on different projects every single month. Like
Yeah.
I can never get bored, obviously, because there is always something different. Um, so it is good, but there are other things out there which I think is more ahead of the curve than finance. Finance is a bit old-fashioned at the moment.
Yeah. Thank you. And a lot of students struggle with transition from academia to professional world. What advice would you give them to navigate this problem, this challenge?
Um, First of all, don't feel like you're alone because I think everyone is going through the same exact feeling. And having that network, as I said, like having people that are starting with you and doing the exact same things are good because you can then talk to them and like have that support system. Um, and also just don't have expectations on kind of like I went to 5 times to the gym while I was at uni. I need to do 5 times when I start my career. Like ease yourself into the transition of first try to like fit into work, try to find your footing there as like a new guy or new girl. It will be hard. So putting like unnecessary pressure on you is obviously not helpful. And then just also obviously you will be in a much more mature environment. There will be people having kids and being
Yeah.
much older than you are. Just try to find things that you can, and that's where it comes back to what I said before on like reading different books. Try to find like common grounds with everyone. Like if you are a well-rounded person, if you have a lot of knowledge on like a lot of small things like I don't know sports and then I don't know time management, you can always find something to talk to with everyone.
Mhm.
And I also found that a lot of people don't really like to talk about work outside of work unless you are like want to be considered a little bit boring because everyone is doing work always. If you that's the only thing you can talk about, people won't really want to talk to you outside of work. And that's how you build a network and that's how you build that connection, which then will be very useful for you.
Mhm.
So I guess having different interests and not being afraid to show that when you transfer to an environment like for example if you play rugby you don't need to hide that fact when you go into professional environment because you think it's not very professional to play rugby. like people will appreciate you for it. Like one of my colleagues, he's a professional rugby player still and has a cut-off time on Tuesdays and Thursdays just to train for rugby. Um, so you can have other interests, and that's what will make you stand out and make you interesting. Um, so just be yourself, really, I think, and don't put a lot of pressure on yourself on how it should be because it just never goes how you think it will. So
Yeah, thank you. And the last question is, what advice would you give to your younger self?
probably that of don't putting a lot of pressure on myself. I think out of uni, I thought like I need to get a perfect job as soon as like I'm out of uni. Like that is the end. Like if I'm not getting the perfect job, if I'm not in the best industry on a or what I want to do, then my whole life is a failure. Like it is a bit of like looking back, I would be like, oh, how like young and naive I was. Like you have like when you graduate, you are like what, 20, 21, 22, whatever, like around that age. So you basically were alive for 22 years. Your career probably will be 40 years. Like
Yeah.
that is twice as much as your age when you are graduating. You have so much time to still figure things out. Even if you don't land the best internship or the best job, you will have time to get there or even change your mind. Like I think most of the people I talked to when we graduated, they changed their minds on what they want to do compared to what they apply to at uni. So you don't really need to, find the perfect job or like settle down in the city that you think you will live your whole life. Like you have so much time to figure it out and just not putting that pressure on yourself, I think will help. Because a lot of us will think, oh, if I don't get a job right out of uni, that I'm a full failure. Like no, not really. It's a different, like a good example. For example, I was accepted to Cambridge after uni Aberdeen, accepted for masters. And that's what I really wanted to do. Like that was my first choice, and I had my graduate job. But then COVID happened,
Mm-hmm.
and Cambridge basically went and told me that, oh, you need to pay this extortionate amount of money for the masters, but it will be online.
Yeah.
And at the time, and it is a lot of money to do masters in the UK in general, but it's even more to do it in Cambridge and Oxford. At the time, I I didn't feel like because obviously at Cambridge and Oxford, the network that you will make is the most valuable network that you will make.
Yeah.
Um, and that you obviously won't make it during COVID. Like you will just sit in a room staring at a screen. Like I might as well just watch YouTube videos for free. Um, so I literally needed to decide at the end of August that I'm not doing Cambridge and I'm going to do my job. And it was really disheartening. And I was really disappointed with myself because I still wanted to do academia. I still wanted to obviously do Cambridge. It would have been like a really,
Yeah.
that's what I wanted to do. That was my first goal. Um, but I just couldn't because life happened. A pandemic happened. No one expected that.
Yeah.
um, and then since I put that pressure on myself, it was really hard for them me to adjust into a career and just adjust into working instead of doing what I wanted to do. Um, but in hindsight, did it really like make or break my life or my career? Probably not. But I only have the benefit of the hindsight now. I didn't have it then. So um, I think just, yeah, taking that pressure off yourself of how you think things should go and then kind of making the best out of how it actually went and then not being disheartened by it is probably the best advice I can give to anyone.